interview with Ellis Swanson for Alan Thompson's Minnesota history class. So why don't we start out with introducing yourself and talking about your family and mom and dad and brothers and so on and so forth.
Okay, Ellis Swanson, and I have 3 brothers, and my wife Geraldine, and I have 4 children, and I have 11 grandchildren, and I have 11 great-grandchildren.
You were born in 1930?
Born in 1930. I was born on a farm in Cannon Falls, Minnesota. Just about 4 miles out of town. We were born right in the farmhouse. Back in those days, you never went to the hospital for birth. You had born right in the house that's where you were living. And all 3 of my brothers were all born at that same place. And I grew up on the farm, and first few years it was tough going in the 30s. 30s were a very depressive time, and later on it improved into the late 30s and the 40s. My grandparents were living right next door to us. And my grandmother's mother, my grandmother, she came from Norway, and she died at
What year was that, Grandpa?
I don't remember what year she came over here. Okay. But
did they move right to Minnesota when they came here?
Yeah. And they settled, a lot of the people that came from the old country, he settled in the areas where the nationality, he was Norwegian, and the area where my
I think you have your thumb over the microphone, Grandpa. There we go.
The area where my grandfather lived, it was a strong Norwegian and Swedish area, and that's where the people tend to come when they come from the old country. They'd settle in the areas where their own nationalities were. So then from then on, she died at middle age rather, and my mother, she ended up, my mother's sister was a baby when she passed away, so my mother had to help bring her up. But my family was in that area all the time. My dad's parents, they didn't come from the old country, but they were of the Swedish accent. And growing up in my childhood, it was much different. We didn't have a whole lot of money, but we made do what we had. We made our own fun. We'd go skiing in the wintertime in the hills in the neighborhood. We'd carry water out and build snow or ski jumps and freeze them. And moonlight nights we'd be out there skiing. So we made our own fun. And then after I went through grade school, I went to high school in Cannon Falls, and after graduating from high school, I was 18 and I went into active duty with the Army for 1 year, and I had to sign up for 6 years in the reserve. And when I completed that, then I was done with my service. And shortly after that, I did some odd jobs after I got home from the Army and worked for this soil sampling for the state of Minnesota, building roads down by Rosemount. And about a few months later then I got a job at Ford Motor Company. And I was at that with the Ford Motor Company for 40 years.
What year did you start?
I started at Ford Motor Company in 1951. And I started working there. I was building truck boxes and truck platforms for 2-ton trucks. I was gas welding and arc welding. And then later, a few years later, I had a chance to go into the maintenance department. And I was with the painters. I called them house painters. We took care of the painting of everything in the inside of the building, the outside, and the offices. A lot of times depending how much money Detroit would send to our plant, that's when they dictated how much work we were going to do, how many painters they'd have. One year, Detroit decided they had a bunch of money they wanted to get rid of, so I presume it was for tax purposes. They decided we should start painting some of the ceilings. So we were painting on weekends. Of course, the plant was shut down, and we had to cover everything with plastic. Used 40, 50 rolls of plastic covering, and they put that up on night shift on Friday night. On Saturday, we'd start painting, and between Saturday and Sunday, we'd go through 600 gallons of paint. We used sprayers that they called the painted the paint that would drop from the ceiling and be dry by the time any hit the floor. But that was a lot of paint to go through and just in a weekend.
Yeah, it sure is.
And then I retired from Ford Motor Company in 1991, and we wintered during the winter months in Texas for 2 years. And after 2 years, a friend of mine said we should come over to Arizona and check it out. And we went over there, and we liked it so well that we ended up buying property there. And so we ended up spending winters in Arizona for about 17 years. And now I'm getting too old to go down there all the time. And I'm getting to be 90 years old, but I'm still able to, thank the good Lord, I'm able to play 9 holes of golf every week. So I'm very thankful for that. Other than that, we're still happily married, but in July, we'll be married for 68 years. So I've had a very wonderful life, and the Lord has blessed us immensely. And now I just taking it easy every day and doing whatever the Lord will let me do. That's about the extent of my life.
Well, I have a few questions here for you.
Okay.
I think we're going to go back to time as a boy on the farm. We'll start there and kind of work our way to the present as well. I can assume that you didn't have, your face is a little dark, Grandpa. I can't see you very well. But there we go. So I would assume you guys didn't have running water or electricity or plumbing or anything like that.
No, we had.
What year did those come to the farm?
Well, we always had water. We had a well. Well, it was about 65 feet deep, and so we always had good, clean water. But we didn't have electricity till about 1940, probably 40 or 41 when we got electricity. I can remember to this day running home from school that day because they knew they were going to turn the current on that day. So that was quite an experience for us.
Yeah, I bet it was. So great grandpa, how long, did she cook in the house on a wood burning stove?
Yeah.
When you were younger?
Yeah, they had wood burning stove for many years. And then finally when we later on, after she got electricity, she got a better stove then, but for many years she would cook on a wooden stove. Matter of fact, in the summertime, when we had thrashing our grain and everything, why we went together with the neighbors when we were thrashing. And the farmers back there then, that meant during work day, you always had morning lunch, noon dinner, afternoon lunch, and then a big supper. And when the thrashers would come to my mother's place, she had to prepare meals for the men that were thrashing, at least probably 12, 13 men. She had to cook on that wood stove to get the meals prepared for them for morning, lunch, noon, and afternoon, and supper.
Wow. Sounds like quite the undertaking.
Yeah, it sure was. We never, it sure was. Yeah.
So how far away was your school when you were growing up?
School was only about maybe a mile away, probably.
So was
We
it
walked,
a
we
one
walked,
house schoolhouse?
yeah, your one room schoolhouse. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And we had, didn't have no well there where the school was. A farmer that lived up on a hill above the school, and we'd go up there and carry water down every day for drinking. And of course, we had outside biffies, and there was no electricity in the school. We had grades 1 through 8.
Huh. So did you guys walk in the warmer times to school?
Oh yeah, yeah.
What about winter time? How did you get to school in the winter?
Sometimes if it was a blizzard or something, my dad would hook up the horse and sleigh and bring us over to school that way. Most of the time we walked on our own to school, unless the weather was really bad. But they never shut the school down, no matter what the weather.
Nothing like today.
Nothing like today is right. Yeah.
So what was when did you guys get your first tractor on the farm?
Oh, that was probably I stop and think here. Probably at 19 maybe 45, maybe, or between 40 and 45. Well, before the work was all done by horses, and that was a lot of work back then.
Yeah.
Because our farm was only 160 acres, so, but it was still meant a lot of work.
Absolutely. That's 160 acres is a lot of land for a city boy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you remember what kind of tractor it was?
Oh yeah, Ellis Chalmers, W.C. Ellis Chalmers, and one time he had a Massey Harris too, and for a little while he had a John Deere B, but he didn't like that, so he got rid of that. But I always liked the W.C. Ellis Chalmers. That was a pretty favorite tractor back then.
So how many horses did you guys have to do the work?
We had about 4 horses. Yeah. One time, there was a sleeping sickness that went around on the horses. And we had a horse that stood in the stall sleeping. He stood there for days before, I can't remember what, if they gave him some medicine or what they did, but I can still see that horse standing in the stall, not moving.
That would be awfully weird to see.
It sure was. I can even remember the name of the horse. The horse was Prince. That was his name. big white horse. But I can't imagine the changes in machinery that we had compared to what they have now in farm machinery. Farm machinery you have now, 90%, I don't even know what they use it for even.
Yeah.
Back then, when we just had a simple two-bottom plow, and horses pulled, and a big drag to clean up the clumps in the dirt in the field. I remember walking behind a drag, driving the horses, and there was wind blowing and dust. I'd have to wear a handkerchief over my nose because the dust would be just terrible.
Yeah. So the drag, that would get out the big rocks too, that would surface throughout the years.
Yeah, sometimes you'd come across one. Yeah, we had one field that for some reason there was a lot of rocks in it that every year we'd have to go out and pick up the rocks. We had a big rock pile in our backyard or the farmyard where rocks that we'd picked up over the years. So it was much different then. We had one year we had snow came too early and we couldn't get the corn off the field. So whenever we need some corn, well, we take the horses and sleighs and go out and pick the corn off the stalks in the wintertime.
Oh. So what other kind of machinery did you guys have that the horses used, or you guys used in tandem with the horses?
Well, we used the horses for cutting the hay and had more for cutting the hay, and they had what they call a side rake to put this hay in rows, and then we'd come and we had a loader that we hooked up behind the hay wagon, and that lifted the hay up as we went along and put the hay into the wagon, and then we'd have to drive home, and then we'd got up by the barn, and we have to big hooks that we jammed into the hay, and a rope pulley and pulled it up to the barn, into the barn, and then you had somebody in the barn to spread that hay around. And that was a lot of hard work.
Yeah.
But then we were fortunate later on in years, but then we had more equipment. A neighbor had what they called a hay baler, and baled the hay for us. But it was still a lot of hard work. These bales were they were pretty heavy, but it still beat the way we had been haying before. But everything was bulwark back in those days. Nowadays they have the machines for everything where you don't have to touch anything. Back then, whatever we did, it was all by hand. One year I worked for about 4 months for my uncle. He had a big farm. And he needed help. So I said, well, I'd help him that summer. He had corn that was so long, high, when we were going to fill the silo, we had to load our own loads out on the field with the corn stalk. And they would hang over both sides of the wagon. That's how long the corn was. And you did that all by yourself. And when you got into what they call the silo filler and chewed up this corn and filled the silo with silage, then you did that by hand by yourself. You did that all day long, back and forth. Then you got done with that at the end of the day, about 7 o'clock. Then you'd go out and milk cows until about 9 o'clock at night.
That was going to be my next question was, how many cows did you guys have?
Well, my dad only had about, I think it was 12 or 13 cows that he had. But my uncle had about, I don't know what it was, good 20 of them at least. I can't remember the exact number anymore. But that was a job that I hated on the farm. That was a job that you had to be there in the morning, you had to be there at night, and it was 7 days a week. I think that was one job that convinced me that farming was not going to be the life that I was going to be interested in.
Yeah, it was 7 days a week.
7 days a week.
Yep. Yeah, farm life is definitely a lot tougher than a lot of other lives, that's for sure.
Yeah, and of course now they've got milking machines and everything for these cows, and it's lots. Well, I can remember when we after we had electricity for a while, my dad bought what they call milking machines, and these machines that you help did the milking of the cows for you, but you had to attach them and everything. It was still a labor saver.
Yeah.
Now they have milking machines that are done by robots, and that's all
Yeah.
this changing. How this changing world has changed.
Yeah, it sure is. And you've seen a lot of changes. I can only imagine the amount of changes you've seen throughout your life.
Yeah, you can't imagine what it was like back in the 30s and the way compared to now. I can remember standing in my grandfather's yard. I was probably maybe 5 or 6 years old at the most, and my grandfather was talking with other men there, and I can remember this day. He stood there. He said, "Yep." He said, "They say someday they're going to have airplanes that are going to carry a lot of people." Little did he know at the time.
Yeah. Lots of airplanes carrying people now.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's how much everything has changed.
So I have a couple of questions about your time at the Ford plant. You said you started in 1951.
Yeah.
Did you start out as a line welder?
I started out building truck boxes for pickups, and then these big platform boxes for 2-ton trucks. That was when we got done with them. They went to a line.
Okay.
And then later on, then I was on the line. I was doing gas welding and arc welding and what they call spot welding. And of course, nowadays, that's all that work is done by robots.
Yeah, I was going to actually ask you if you remembered when the robots started making their appearance in the plant.
Yeah, I don't remember the exact year anymore, but the robots first came in were the spot welding, and then they had a robot that put the windshields in the cars, and that was the first robots that we had. And then later on, they built a huge new paint building, and then that was all robots they did all the painting of the units. And they had a huge tank a dip tank that these car bodies and truck bodies were going to dip down into this tank as they were going on the line, and they would put the seal coating on before they went through where the robots actually spray painted the different colors. So that was quite a...
You're moving off the screen again, Grandpa. There we go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember going to the Ford plant. I don't remember exactly how young I was, but we went on a tour, and it was Mom, Jamie, and I, and they showed us that part where they dipped the whole thing in the paint. And when you were just talking about that, that memory just popped right into my head.
Yeah.
Of being on that tour that year.
Yeah, for quite a few years there, they had tours, and in the spring when they had tours, oh my goodness, they had to have plant protection had to have extra men. That there were so many hundreds of people that went through a day. It was just unbelievable. It'd be a steady stream going through all day long. That was how many people would come to the tours through the plant.
Yeah, it was a really cool place.
Yeah.
Do you have any favorite stories from the Ford plant?
Well, I worked in different areas painting. They had a huge steam plant, and I had to do a lot of painting down in the steam plant for the boilers and everything. And we had a hydro plant, and I had to do a lot of painting in the hydro plant. Matter of fact, the one time year they took one of the generators apart, and I had to go down bottom of the generator shaft and paint Rust-Oleum paint down in there. And a lot of times on the hydro plant, had to take care of the windows, any windows that were broken. We'd have a lift, GLC lift, they called them, and lift us out over the water and repair the windows. And we made sure that we were buckled into that lift at that time because we were working right over the intake where the water went into the power plant. And the steam plant, we had to repair windows there a lot of times, and we had a 100-foot lift, and I would expend that 100-foot lift out to the very end in order to reach the top of the building where I had to fix windows. Matter of fact, I had to stand on the ledge in the middle of the basket in order to reach it. And I had a guy with me, and he was so scared of the way it was shaking there, when he sat down in the bucket, he wouldn't move. So that was kind of a different experience. But it was interesting, working in the hydro plant too. And one time we had to paint the ceiling in the hydro plant, and you couldn't use no sprayers or nothing. Couldn't conduct electricity, so we had to roll the ceiling, and they had a big crane that went across the ceiling of the hydro plant. And this crane had this shaft going across, and we stood on that, and we rolled that whole ceiling by hand with rollers. And well, that was a different experience.
Were you guys using 9-inch or 18-inch rollers?
No, we just had a 9-inch roller.
Okay, because I was gonna say, man, that would be really heavy using those 18-inch rollers like that.
Yeah. No, I had a lot of interesting experiences with the paint department there. One time they had a big tank for air tanks, and the inside of this air tank had to be painted, and you had a little opening that you could just squeeze to get into the tank. And of course you had to have masks on, and it had to be painted with Rust-Oleum in there. And they tied a rope around my waist when I got in there to make sure if I happened to pass out, they could get me out of there. This tank, probably about a 300-gallon tank that you went inside to paint. A lot of different experiences I had there.
Did you volunteer for that, Grandpa, or did you draw the short straw?
No, that was just you were volunteered by them.
Ah.
Yeah. But I had a lot of friends that I made the years I worked there. Matter of fact, a lot of them, when they went to Arizona in the wintertime, we'd have a Ford get-together down there, and we'd have go to a dinner place and have a big meal and reminisce about our years at working at Ford. They had one every year in February down in Arizona. So that was a lot of fun to meet up with some of the guys that you knew. And of course, yet to this day, we have a get-together at Christmas with anybody that wants to come. They have put on a big meal for us. And in the summertime, they have a big picnic over at Battle Creek Park, put on a big picnic for us. Of course, this year, the virus, that's all canceled out. So you still meet a lot of people that you know over the years. So it's been very interesting to keep in contact with a lot of the people.
So, go ahead, sorry.
No, I don't know that.
So next I'm going to ask about you and Grandma, and how you guys met and where you guys lived, and so yeah, how did you guys meet?
Well, they had the prom ballroom on University Avenue for many years there. And me and my cousin went to the prom ballroom that night, and a lot of the women, they were young gals that were there, and they had a special dance that night where you lined up on one side and women on the other side, and you connected with the one that came by, and that's where I got connected with my wife, and I kept seeing her after that, and what do you know, that ended up in marriage, and 68 years later, we're still going together.
So were you living up here at that time? What year was that when you guys met?
That was in 19, what was that, 50, a little later in 51. And no, I was rooming. I had a room over in Minneapolis. I was working at the Ford plant.
Okay.
So I just was running a room over there.
So what year did you get out of the service?
I got out of the service in 1950.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you said you did 6 years of reserves after that?
Yeah. And the summer camp that we had to go to every summer for down at Camp Ripley in Wisconsin. And that was usually a 2-week stint that we did there. Matter of fact, I was gone at summer camp when our daughter Susan was born. I got a message they called the office at the Army headquarters there and told me I had a new daughter. So he said, "You better take off your car and go back home again."
So what camp was that, Grandpa? Was it
Fort
at
Ripley.
Ripley?
Or not, no, it was in Wisconsin. I forget the name of it now.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So 68 years. My math is. So what year did you guys get married? I just
52.
had math course and my head's all jumbled.
We got married in 52.
1952.
Yeah. July 26th. Matter of fact, that's coming up shortly here now.
Sure is.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what church did you guys get married at?
We were married at St. Matthew's Church over on Lexington Avenue, just a couple blocks past LaFond Avenue. LaFond Avenue was one of the places that we lived in for a few years. We started out living, we were on Summit Avenue in the apartment building down by downtown St. Paul. And then we had a little place over on DeSoto Street on the east side of St. Paul. And then this house opened up. The mother, Jerry, my wife, she used to babysit for these people at this house there. And he was a druggist. And when they decided they were going to move to Highland Park, they let us know they were leaving. And so we were able to get a hold of this house. And we moved, I think we lived there, oh gosh, I don't know, probably 6-7 years maybe.
Can you move the iPad, Grandpa? Your book.
What?
To cut your head off. We can't see you.
Oh.
There we go.
Yeah. We paid $50 a month for that house rent.
Wow.
Yeah. And then in 1960, I think it was, we built a new house in Maplewood. And we lived there for about 30 years. And then we moved out to Inver Grove Heights for about 10 years. And then we needed to get a townhome with just one floor, and some other that didn't have to go to the stairway. So now we've lived where we are now for a little over 15 years now. So anyway, that's a way of moving around we did.
Do you have a favorite place out of all the places you've lived? Including Texas or Arizona, of course.
Yeah, well, we really enjoyed Arizona, the time we spent down there. That's one thing I really do miss now, not getting down there in the wintertime for a little bit. Because I was doing a lot of golfing back then, and of course, there's no golfing in Minnesota in the wintertime. We, matter of fact, I was in charge of the golf league in Arizona for 10, 12 years, where I got the groups together that lined up for the course that we played on. I'd get about 62 golfers lined up every week. And so I really enjoyed that. But we enjoyed our time here too when we were moved to our new home in Maplewood there in 1960. We really enjoyed that place too. And it was fun with the kids. And after the kids left, of course, we had a place up at Sunset Bay in Brainerd for a few years. Now we built a place down in Sturgeon Lake and was there for a few years. And of course, a lot of the grandkids and the kids all came up, had a lot of fun times up there.
We can't see you again, Grandpa.
And
There we go.
I keep tipping this thing. But we've enjoyed a lot of the years with all our grandchildren too. We really enjoyed them.
So I'm back to where I was on my list here. So where did you guys have your reception at?
For our wedding?
Yeah.
Yeah, we were married in St. Matthew's Church, and then we had a reception at the Commodore Hotel in St. Paul. That was over on Western, not too far from the cathedral area over there. That's where we had a reception.
Is that the same Commodore today?
Yeah,
Same place?
it burnt one time, but they redone it. And matter of fact, we went over there a few years ago just for the fun of it. And of course, it changed a lot since then, but they were still operating now. I don't know with the trouble with the virus now, if they've been open now or not, I don't know.
Yeah, it's hard to say who's opened and who stayed shut these days.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I forgot a couple of questions about the Ford plant here. What different vehicles did you guys work on? Did you have a favorite vehicle you worked on while you run the line?
We built cars there that was the main thing, was the cars, and when I was working there, and then pickup trucks they built there. The cars is what I did a lot of the welding on, and the trucks. And then after a while, we made convertibles there. And matter of fact, we had a glass plant there when I first started. They had glass or sand mine underneath the plant. And they had tunnels there that go up way up to Highland Park underground, about 100 feet down. Matter of fact, at one time I went down into the sand mine. The plant was shut down on a Saturday, and I was doing some extra work at the plant. And one of the plumbers came by, and he was going to go down there and do some work. He wanted to know if I wanted to go down and take a ride up the tunnel. So that's what I did. And amazing, it's pure white sand down there. Just tunnels all over the place. One main tunnel went up all the way up underneath Highland Park. So the glass plant shut down. I can't remember the year now. And so then they kept making cars. And then they quit the cars and eventually went into trucks only. And that's what they were making now when they shut the plant down.
So did they make the Rangers like the whole time, or was there a bigger truck and then the Rangers?
Well, it was a bigger truck before they came with the Rangers.
Okay.
Yeah. Matter of fact, the cars in 1955, I bought a new 55 Ford, and back then I followed that car as it went built, going through the plant.
Oh, that's cool.
They would hang a sign on the employee, and of course, a lot of people when they seen that, they would try to do a little extra as the body went through wherever they could, you know.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, the painters, they tried to put so much paint on the rocker panels on my car that they had to grind some off and repaint the rocker panels. They put too much. And of course, like the welders back then, there was no automatic welders then. That was all done by hand. And the welders and all that, they did extra welding on it for me. So it was kind of fun to see your own car being built and follow it through the plant.
Yeah, that's definitely unique.
Yeah, it was quite an experience. Yeah.
So you and Grandma danced. You guys did square dancing for quite a few years, didn't you?
Yeah, did square dancing, and what they call round dancing, and old time dancing too. With old time, they had a band that was in the Twin City area for many years called Hoopy John. He
What
was
was it?
well known old time band.
What was the name of it, Grandpa?
Hoopy John.
Loopy John?
Hoopy John. They used to have an American House on Rice Street, St. Paul, and he played there every Saturday night. And later on, then he played every Monday night at the Marigold Ballroom in downtown Minneapolis. We used to go over there. And of course, later on, when we started square dancing, when we went to Texas and Arizona, we did a lot of square dancing and round dancing, with different kind of a dance. So we kept pretty active. When we were in Arizona, I was busy with the golf work, and the wife was busy with computer club and sewing club, and she was busy with that all the time. And we were also busy with our church that we joined in Arizona. Matter of fact, we were on the evangelism board at that church for a few years while we were down there. So we were very fortunate. We had quite a life, both down in Arizona and back home.
Here. Are there any years that or events that happened throughout time that have really stuck out to you? Like, you know, maybe the first man on the moon, watching that on TV, or you know, any kind of events, life-changing events. I'm sure you've seen dozens of them throughout your lifetime. Is there any that stand out more than others?
Well, of course, landing on the moon, that was very unbelievable. And even with your technology, with the airplanes and everything, it's just so unbelievable how that has taken place. And technology with your telephones and your computers and everything. Telephones, when I was a kid on the farm, you had switchboard operators at a telephone office. And when you wanted to call somebody, you'd contact the switchboard and you'd tell them who you wanted, and they would ring the place where you're calling. Our country line on our farm, we have about 19 people on the same line.
Oh,
The ring at our house at the farm was long and too short. That was when they got long and too short. We knew what the call was for us. And then, of course, when you answered the phone, you could hear about 10 other phones going click, click, click. They wanted to listen to what was going on, too. That was compared
That's
to
so
that.
private.
Yeah. And then they had a special ring if there was somebody needed emergency, needed help, or I forget how many rings. It was a number of rings that they would ring, and that alerted you. You knew somebody needed help. So it was quite a system. It worked. Seemed to work pretty good, I guess. Yeah. A little bit different now than the telephones we have now, where you can call all over the world.
Yeah, no long distance,
No,
extra pay.
no. Yeah.
I remember when we talked to Yusuke in Japan the one summer on, I think it was Skype at the time.
Okay.
That was over at Mom's house,
Yeah.
and that was pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Talking to somebody on the other side of the world.
Yeah. That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you take like now, when I was in the service, well, of course, you didn't have no contact with anybody. Now people in the service, they can have Skype with their people at home every day if they want to,
Yeah.
They keep a closer touch with their families.
Yeah, it's not like waiting for a letter anymore.
No, that's right. That's right. Yeah. I had an interesting trip with my brother Harlan when he got out of the Navy. Why, they have this free schooling you could take up if you wanted to. So he took up flying small planes, and I had Stanton Airport that was about, I don't know, 10, 15 miles west of Cannon Falls. He'd go up there when he was taking his flying lessons, and I'd go up there with him and shoot the breeze with the mechanics and working on other airplanes. And one day I was up there sitting there talking to the mechanic while Harlan was taking a flying lesson, and they had an airplane there that was a two-seater, but it was open air cockpit. And he says, "You want to go for a ride?" And I said, "Yeah, let's go." So we got in, and we didn't even pull the shield over the top of us. We just sat buckled in there.
Huh.
So we flew out over my farm, and he wasn't up very high at all, just making a circle going around and around. Of course, the folks down on the ground were waving. I remember putting my arm out, waving at them, and I had a hard time pulling my arm back in again. We got back to the airport where we were up quite a ways, and I thought, well, I wonder he's going to circle around, and before he lands, well, he didn't circle around. He put it in a dive. We drove down, and he leveled off, and we landed. That was quite a plane ride I got. I used to go up a lot of times with other people down there and go for plane rides in small planes. And after my brother got his license, he asked my other older brother Wally and me if we wanted to go for a ride. So we said, well, yeah, we'd like to do that. But now you got to remember, my brother Wally, he crash landed in a B-29 during the war and survived that. And as we were getting into the plane here to go for a ride, and Wally looked at me, he says, "I must be nuts." He said, "I hope he knows how to fly this thing."
We can't see you again, Grandpa.
So he gave us a ride in there, and so that was quite a thrill to have my own brother flying the plane. I was sitting in a little Piper Cub going with him,
Yeah.
Yeah. But my brother was very lucky with it. When he crash landed in the B-29, they were training in New Mexico, and they had just taken off, and the motor conked out, and he had to crash land in the desert there. And of course, with full gas tanks and everything, to this day, they have no idea why that thing didn't catch on fire.
Wow.
The tanks were busted, and their gas leak were almost waiting in some gas, and they had to hard time to get my brother out of the plane. He was a radio man on the plane, so he ended up in the hospital for a while. And the irony of that was his crew. They usually stick together. Well, they went overseas. He got left behind, kind of was injured, and his whole crew got wiped out overseas. So
Oh, wow.
quite an irony that the good Lord must have made he figure keep him back here.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway,
Is there any, go ahead, sorry.
go ahead. I don't know.
I was going to say, are there any other events you can think of that stick out to you?
Well, I had an event that happened to me when I was a kid. My brother Harlan and one of the neighbor boys, we went down into the woods, and we were going to play Tarzan. And we had a limb hanging out over a bank, and so they threw a rope out over that, and we were going to grab this end of this rope and then swing out over the ditch and come back again. So he decided I'd be the first one to try it out. So I grabbed the hold and went running and swung out over the bank. Only trouble was I didn't come back. I dropped and fell down and got knocked out completely, and ended up going to the doctor, and I had 2 broken arms.
Oh.
So that was not a very fun event.
I can imagine not. How long did you have to have casts on your arms?
Had quite a while. Matter of fact, the left arm, he didn't set it right. So after 3 days of just walking around all night long from the pain, they decided I got it set wrong. I had to go to the hospital and get it reset. So I was in the cast for, I can't remember anymore now. It was a long time ago. I think it was, I'm probably 10, 11 years old probably when that happened.
Mm.
One of the joys of growing up as a kid, you know.
Yep.
Yeah, I think my brother, my father was not very happy about that. I think he might have had a little taste of something in the rear end that night from his father. Yeah.
Speaking of great grandpa and great grandma, is there anything you'd like to share about them with us?
Oh, my grandfather, my one grandfather, he got killed in a terrible accident. Back then, you saw your own wood and everything, you know. And he had a saw rig that with a huge saw blade that cut up these logs into chunks. And my grandfather always had a habit. He had a long kind of leather jacket like, and he always had the habit of just button the top buttons and leave the bottom ones open. And he was running this log through to get it cut, and the shaft got a hold of his jacket and pulled him into the saw blade.
Oh.
That was terrible, and they took him to the hospital, but he lived just a few hours after that. But that was a horrible way to go. I can still remember the day of his funeral. Back then, a lot of times your funerals, they start right in your own home. They had the casket right in his home, and the church was just 3 houses up from where he lived. So they run the casket up to the church from the home. I can still remember him walking up there. He was so well known in the area. Matter of fact, he was a janitor of the church part-time, and they had a huge bell that they rang every night at 6 o'clock, and that was his job every night, to go up to the church and pull on the ropes and ring this huge bell. So he was well known in the whole area of Cannon Falls. The day of his funeral, the church was completely full of people because he was so well known. So that was, I'll never forget that day. Yeah. Other than that, I always had a busy life. My dad was always busy all the time, and I really loved my dad. I felt so bad for him because he had such terrible back. He was, and trying to run a farm with a bad back, he suffered for so many years. I'll never forget that part.
Yeah, I don't know how he'd be able to do it.
No, to this day, I don't know how in the world, because I've had back problems myself, and I can't imagine how he kept doing it the way he was. Yeah. Yeah.
So did you play any sports while you were growing up?
Well, I could never get any sports in high school because you had to get home and help on the farm, do the work on the farm. So I never was able to get involved in any sports. It was all work back then, no play.
Did you play any instruments?
No.
No.
When I was in high school, at one time I stayed down with at my grandmother's house in the wintertime. And they had a 4-lane bowling alley in the basement of a restaurant in town there. And I went down there and set pins. You had the machine that you had to set the pins, and so I'd go down there and probably work 2 shifts, the 7 o'clock shift and the 9 o'clock shift. I think I got paid $2. And I'll never forget, we had this league that played on nights, you know. It's all league play, and they had this one bowler he came from Hampton. I'll never forget him. He threw the ball so hard when he wound up and threw that ball that the pins would just go flying. We knew when he was bowling, we had to stand up and off to one side to make the pins didn't fly up and hit us. That was quite an experience. But I really thought I was really making some money, boy, and I got paid $2.
Yeah. I wonder what that would convert to these days.
Yeah, quite a big difference, I'll tell you.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
So would you say golf is your favorite sport, or baseball?
Yeah, golf is I enjoy watching baseball and everything. I enjoy watching that, but golf is my favorite thing that I was doing over the years. And we enjoyed our square dancing and everything over the years too. We really enjoyed that too. And of course, we had always enjoyed watching the Twins. And of course, now this has been such a terrible year where we really miss not having that on TV.
Yeah. Yeah, I can relate. I've the past few months I realized that maybe I wasn't watching it, but it was on in the background and I was still listening to it. and you can't even do that.
No, that's right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's definitely been a different year.
Yeah.
Sure.
I never, in my 90 years, I never thought I would see a year like this. It's just unbelievable. And the sad part of this, until we get a vaccine, is this is going to go on for a while too.
Yeah. Yep. Glad that we don't have it as bad as some of the other states, like Florida, for instance.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
That would be extremely scary living down there.
Yeah, it sure would. Well, not only Florida, California, and Texas also.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
But I've been fortunate to have a wonderful family over there all these years. All my children and grandchildren. They've helped keep us young.
Yeah. You guys impress me. You guys are still, as active as you can be, with the pandemic going on. But most people your age don't know how to use any kind of technology, and you guys have always been right on top of that.
We keep learning every day, but there's a lot we don't know. But we get by with some of the basics anyway. So
yeah, yep.
But we are so blessed. Over all these years, we're able to still be around here. Matter of fact, when I was a young man, there was very few people that ever lived at the age I'm at right now. Matter of fact, when I was a kid, if they got to be 60 years old, boy, we thought they were really old people.
Yeah.
So it's quite a change, I'll tell you. We're been really blessed that way.
Yeah. Yeah, we sure have been. That is absolutely true.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's all the questions that I had. You were talking about when you're over here on the 4th, just a couple last week and a half ago. You were talking about the summer of '56, and you said it was extremely hot that year.
Oh, yeah. It was 55.
Oh, 55? Okay.
1955, although that was a horrible summer. It was hot, heat, and humidity all summer long. Matter of fact, we lived in that tiny little house there on LaFawn Avenue in St. Paul, and of course there was no air conditioning. We didn't even have a fan, and couldn't sleep at night. I'd sleep on the living room floor, and you wake up in the morning and it's like you just had never gone to bed. And at that time we were working 10 hours a day at the Ford plant, and of course that was ungodly hot in there. They had little pamphlets with salt tablets. They kept telling us, keep taking them salt tablets and drink water. And of course, I don't know if it helped any, but that was a rough year working in the plant, I'll tell you. And it was high temperature and high humidity, and then working such long hours. And we were working 6 days a week. And so it was a tough year, but we survived.
So were you welding that year too?
Yeah, I was. Yeah.
Oh man. So were you wearing full leather sleeves?
Oh, yeah, we had coveralls on and completely covered over, so that didn't help any either,
Yeah.
Yeah. But after 40 years, I still made it through, so.
Yep. Yeah, that's a really long time.
Yeah,
I'm 45, so I can't even grasp that, that amount of time.
no,
And
no,
it's pretty unheard of these days as well,
yeah,
that people will stick with a company that long,
yeah,
or
yeah,
a company will keep someone that long.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, after a few years now, the company likes to get rid of you, so they'll end up with paying you a lot of benefits.
Yeah, that's my professors at school said, with your age, you're at a little bit of a disadvantage.
Yeah,
So we'd like to have you work with us, and we can teach you more to give you a leg up when you go,
yeah,
go out in the world and find a job. So
yeah, that's right.
I'm grateful for that, for
Yeah,
sure.
that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm really glad that I got to spend the time and listen to you today.
Well, I enjoyed spreading some stuff that I went through over the years. Some of it, it's a lot different life for young people now than what I had when I was a young person.
Yep.
Any fun that we had to have, we had to make up our own fun. There was no games or anything. We made up our own fun.
Yeah, the
We
kids these days, they'd be lost.
yeah, I guess so. Yeah,
They wouldn't know what to do.
oh, we had a radio with battery operated, and boy, that was quite a deal when we got that. I'll tell you. And then we got
When did you get that?
they had that pretty much shortly after I was born, I think. And of course, I would get to be 6, 7 years old. The kids programs at that time that was Jack Armstrong and Tom Mix and and the Lone Ranger. Man, I heard that on the radio. Lone Ranger and Tonto. Yeah.
When did you guys get a TV?
I think it was probably around 1950, probably.
Okay.
I think, yeah, I wonder if they didn't get it while I was in 49 when I was in the Army. I can't remember for sure. 49 or 50. Yeah. Yeah.
How many channels were there when TV first came out, Grandpa?
I think they had 3 channels, I think, if I remember right. Yeah.
And I can remember from my childhood that I think it was like 12 or 1 a.m. They didn't have any programming on. It was just
Yeah,
all
right.
snow.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
Yep.
That's right. Yeah. 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 Radio, I'll never forget when I was a kid, they had WCCO had Cedric Adams, newsman, and he was really well known throughout, of course, the state at that time. Of course, CCO was the main station back then. And he used to broadcast at the state fair. He broadcast his noon news at state fair, and I remember going up there and Dad made sure we went over to the building where he was going to be broadcasting so we could see him. That was a pretty big deal back then. Yeah.
Was what about how old were you when you guys went to the state fair to see him?
Well, it's probably maybe, I don't know, 11, 12 maybe, something like that. Yeah.
So has the fairgrounds always been that big?
Well,
We can't see you again, Grandpa.
yeah, matter of fact, back then, the state fair had what they call Machinery Hill. And man, that'd be just loaded with different types of farm machinery. So my dad was always interested in going to see the latest in farm machinery and tractors and everything, you know. That was quite a deal back then.
So did you guys go every year?
No,
No.
no, I can only remember going with the folks maybe a couple of times only. Yeah. Of course, back then that was a pretty big trip to take a drive up the cities. And,
Yeah. Yeah, I can only imagine it took probably twice as long to get up here.
that was 50 miles away.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And my dad had an old, well, he had a newer car then. I think it was 37 Chevrolet. He had an old 29 Chevrolet when I was a kid. That had a little box at the end and back of it for a trunk. And boy, in the summertime, he'd go down to Prairie Island, and the Indians down there would raise watermelons and go down there and fill the car up with watermelons and bring them back home and put them in our stock tank, and the cold water coming out, pumping cold water in the tank. And boy, that was a real feast when we had those watermelons.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah.
So that just another question came to mind when you mentioned keeping them cold in the water tank. Did you guys had an ice box for a refrigerator, or did you guys have a cellar?
No, we didn't have no ice box. We'd have some of the stuff that needed to be cool. We'd put it down on the steps in the basement because the basement would be awful cold. And we'd have a barrel. We'd butcher in the fall, and then in the winter we had a big wooden barrel and set that out, and the meat and everything frozen. We'd put that out, kept outside in the wintertime. That was our refrigerator.
Did you ever have to worry about bears or anything?
No, we never didn't have to worry about that. No.
Did you guys hunt while you were growing up?
Did we what?
Did you guys hunt at all? Deer?
There wasn't. When I was a kid, there wasn't no deer in our area. They migrated down later on.
Oh.
But they had squirrels, and my dad once in a while would hunt some pheasant, but didn't really do a lot of hunting. Matter of fact, one time there were the fox had taken over down there. They was killing so many of the chickens and everything. So a whole bunch of the farmers got together and they had what they called a fox hunt. And I can't remember how they killed a lot of fox. So that was kind of different.
Yeah, we can't see you again, Grandpa.
And then they on their farm, after we got the electricity, well, then my dad decided we had to get the water run over to the barn. And so we had to dig a 6-foot trench, and that was all done with shovels, 6 foot deep. We went a trail from the pump house up to the house, and then from the house to the barn. That was from the house to the barn was, oh gosh, 150, 200 feet. We had to dig a trench 6 foot deep, all by hand.
Yikes.
But
a lot of blisters and calluses.
Yeah, I can remember digging a lot of times there, boy. It got pretty boring after a while.
Yeah.
But back then, that was all hard labor. You didn't think nothing of it. You just did it, that's all. But that was quite a treat when we got water running out to the barn. That was really a treat.
How many gallons would you think you had to haul to the barn?
How many what?
How many gallons of water do you think you had to haul to the barn every day before that?
We never hauled it to the barn. We had a stock tank down by the pump house,
Okay.
and they let the cattle out there, and they'd come down and go over to the stock tank. But in the wintertime, before we had running water in the barn, we had a heater deal they stuck in the middle of the stock tank, and my dad would have to build a fire in that every day to thaw out the ice in it from freezing overnight. And you get that thawed out, and then the cows and horses will be able to drink water. So in the wintertime, every morning you'd have to go down there and build a fire in that little heater and get the ice thawed off. So once we got the water running to the barn, well, that took care of that. Then we had little receptacles for each stall for the cattle to drink water in.
Nice.
Another big invention on the farm.
You guys have chickens too?
Oh yeah, we had chickens, yeah, chickens and hogs, and one time for a little bit we had some sheep, but that only lasted a couple of years. With chickens, we'd get baby chicks from the hatchery. We'd get a couple of boxes of those every spring. We'd get some chicks from the hatchery, and you'd have to watch them because the hawks flying around, they'd come down and steal them if you didn't have a little building for the chicks to run into.
Yeah.
And they had a little electric heater that kept the little chicks warm, and it was really different back then.
One of Rachel's friends learned the hard way with chickens and hawks.
Yeah.
Yeah. She was heartbroken.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Remember one time I had one of the older chickens had died, so my brother took the chicken and he took it and set a trap on top of a fence post, put that chicken by it there, and we caught a hawk that way one time.
Oh.
Hawk thought he was coming down for a nice meal, and he got caught in the trap. Man, Harlan was full of mischievous things all the time. One time after we had a little metal pan that when we were milking, we put little milk in there, we always had a lot of cats to help keep the mice down in the barn. So we had an electric fence, and Harlan hooked up a wire from an electric fence to this little tin pan. And when the cats come to get some milk, they get a little zing, and they go meow and took off in a hurry. I don't know if my dad ever knew about that or not. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we had to think back a lot of things we did when we were kids that we really enjoyed each other, I'll tell you. Yeah. But
I'm just writing and catching up here. Yeah, like I was saying, I'm really glad that we got to spend the time together and do this.
yeah, there are a lot of things that happen. Of course, don't come to mind right now, but probably after we're all done, I can think of other things that, but
Yeah.
It's harder. Different times in my life, I think back on different stuff that we have done over the years. have a lot of good memories when I was a child on the farm. One thing I can remember at thrashing time, we didn't to begin with, we didn't have elevators. We thrash machine, and grain would be in sacks, and then they'd haul it to the granary, and then have to carry them sacks into the granary and upstairs, upstairs of the granary. That was all bulwark back then. When I was a kid, when they were thrashing, they stack the straw. We use the straw for bedding for the animals in the winter.
Mm-hmm.
I'd sit on the back end of the thrashing machine and run this blower back and forth to spread the straws that came out. And of course, summertime, it'd probably be 90 degrees, and sitting on top of that metal thrashing machine, and that was not a fun job. But you didn't think about that then. It was quite, and they would, a couple of neighbors, I'd go over there and they would pay me. And boy, one time, one neighbor, he always paid good. I'd probably end up getting a couple of dollars from him for sitting on them, running that blower all the time. Boy, I thought I had $1 million when he gave me that.
Yeah. Yeah. So what kind of grain did you guys
We had
grow?
oats and wheat.
Oats and wheat.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
where would you guys sell it in town, or
Well,
where did you sell it?
We'd use a lot of it for grinding up for feed for the animals. And
Okay.
same with the corn and everything. Use a lot of the corn for the hogs and grind up other. They had a feed mill in Cannon Falls, and he'd haul that in town. They would grind it up for him. A little later on, my dad got his own grinder. He could grind up the food himself, the grain and corn and everything himself. Yeah.
So most of it was used for feed then.
Yeah.
I was shooing Natalie off. Yeah, we were just learning in our history class about we're covering this week. We're covering 1900s to 1940s,
Oh,
and
okay.
during that time, Minnesota had the largest sawmill, the largest flour mill, and the largest open pit mine in the world.
Okay. Yeah.
The industry was. It said in our book that Minneapolis, St. Paul, and the surrounding area was growing faster than Chicago during that time.
Yeah. Yeah, I can remember that was a big deal up at Iron Range back then. As a matter of fact, we took a 2 or 3 day off. My mother's brother lived neighbor, and he'd come over and took care of our chores for us, and we took a drive. Dad took a drive up the Iron Range, and oh man, we seen that open pit mine. That was just unbelievable. It's kind of funny then when we took that trip, we had this one dog that he would go get the cows for us. When come time to milk the cows, well, we had to tell him it was time to get the cows, and he'd go all the way down the pasture, which was quite a ways away. And he'd go down, round them up, and bring them back for us. And when we took this trip up north that time, the dog sat outside the front door of the farmhouse, and he never moved while we were gone. He wouldn't do nothing for my uncle. He didn't eat. He didn't do nothing. I can remember just as plain as day yet today. The day we came home, coming down the driveway, and that dog came running up the driveway. He went absolutely crazy. But it was quite a sight, I'll tell you. The dogs are much smarter than you'll ever give them credit for.
Yeah. Yeah, they sure are.
Yeah. Yeah. That's just like that dog with him when we had that place at Sturgeon Lake. We had that little chamois, they called them.
Yep.
And when we go up there, they had a sign that said Sturgeon Lake 3 miles. And the dog would be laying on the back window, and when we got that sign, he'd jump down and he'd be looking out the window. He knew we were almost there.
Yeah,
You know,
I remember riding with you guys, and Chamois doing that.
Yeah, that was unbelievable. Yeah, 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 yeah. We had a lot of different dogs when I was a kid on the farm. We had a little rat terrier dog, and he would sleep behind the wood stove in the wintertime. A lot of times I'd lay back there with him behind that wood stove. It was nice and warm back there
Yeah.
when I was a little kid. And we'd have puppies with him every once in a while. Yeah. That was a neat dog back then. Yeah. We had one dog he was good for hunting squirrels. Matter of fact, my uncle would even come out there and take them out in the woods because the dog had a knack of treeing squirrels. And he would, if he knew when the squirrel was up in the tree, the dog, he knew it was there, and he would just circle the tree until you went over there and go after the squirrel. Yeah.
I can remember hunting red squirrels with you at Sturgeon Lake.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Is there anything else you'd like to share with all of us, Grandpa?
Well, I'm trying to think. I should have wrote more stuff down to try to bring my memory back to me. I think the most satisfaction I've had out of life is I've had a wonderful family of my own kids and grandchildren, and that has meant the most to me as long as I've had such a wonderful family. Now when you're getting up to my age where you learn to appreciate things a lot more than I did when I was much younger. The only one thing that I regret is I didn't ask my folks about things that happened even back in their time. And that was one thing, my folks never really shared much with us kids about their life at all. And of course, back then I was young and I didn't know I'd be that interested until I got older and realized that a lot of things I should have asked that I didn't ask, You think about stuff like that when it's too late.
Yeah.
But now I'm in my twilight years, or what they call. You take a day at a time.
Yep. Twilight years, because you're such a star for all of us in the family.
Yeah, well, I'm been blessed to have a wonderful wife, and she has helped me through the years. We've helped each other through the years. That's why we've been married for 68 years. And we had the good times and the bad times. And
Yep. That's what marriage is about all the times. That's absolutely right.
yeah,
And finding the way to work through it with your partner is an awesome thing. I've
yeah,
learned that through time too.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Mm. Mm.
Well, if you think of things later, we can always hop on another call like this, and I can add it to the video.
Yeah, I'll think about it for a while. You never know. Maybe I'll come up with some other crazy thing.
Yeah, that's why when I called you and asked you, I said, "Oh, we'll do it in a couple days," because I didn't want to put you right on the spot. Because, like you said, sometimes it's hard to recall everything, and then
Yeah.
sometimes you don't remember things until you're talking about them.
No, that's right. No, no, no. I know one thing. I really enjoyed going up with my brother when he was taking flying lessons. And then sometimes I would pay this one pilot to take me up for a ride, and I had a little box camera, and I'd take pictures. I've got pictures of taken on the farm where we were flying over it, circling around, with just little box camera, no camera, much of a camera at all.
Right. Yeah.
But I've often thought now I'd like to go to Lake Elmo Airport or whatever, or South St. Paul, and see if I could hire somebody to take me up, and then go down and fly over the area down there where our farm was, and see what it looks like again from the air.
Yeah. That would be really neat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, time marches on.
Yep. That is one of the constants, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And it sure seems like as the older you get, the faster it goes.
Oh yeah, my dad always told me that when I was a kid. He always told me, remember, when you just wait till you get older. He said, the older you get, the faster the years go by. And boy, was he ever right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can't imagine how fast they're probably flying by for you. They're going
Yeah.
by pretty quick for me at 45.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't really imagine the age I am and still able to move around. So the Lord has blessed me immensely.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. He's blessed all of us. That is for sure.
Yeah. But if my memory loosens up and I can come up with anything else, why